Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our read-through of Mecha Ace. We'll be continuing today with Episode 4, so let's dive right in. Episode 4, Roar, Lionheart, The White Machine's First Flight. Colonial Ship Caliburn, 8 hours later. After a passable night's sleep and your morning routine, you find yourself once again sitting in the mess hall, poking at a ration tray with a metal fork. The label claims that the contents are sausage and egg, but the smell of the stuff doesn't do your appetite any favors. Then again, you never were really hungry before a flight op. The combination of prudent nervousness of a professional doing a high-risk job and the hard-earned knowledge that the combat drugs you will soon need to take are capable of unsettling all but the most pacified stomachs. Still, you try to eat. Your body can't run on combat drugs alone. You'll need nutrition for the arduous day of patrol and possible combat ahead of you. You keep prodding at the rubbery food sitting in front of you, trying to will yourself to ingest a portion of the wretched stuff. You're still prodding when a small, black-haired shape sits next to you. It's Watanabe, the kid from yesterday, the one who'd freaked out when you mentioned your Lance's name and your unit's new bridge controller. The new volunteer is obviously nervous as she sets her tray down on the table. After a few moments of observation, it becomes clear to you that the kid's even more jittery than you are. While you've at least opened up your ration pack, the kid has remained almost stock still, staring blankly at the foil-wrapped package sitting on her stamped metal tray. Suddenly, she turns to you. "I'm sorry." You look up in surprise. "What?" The kid swallows hard. "I'm sorry for freaking out on you yesterday. It's just that I had a lot on my mind. Anyway, the captain told me I should talk to you, get to know you a little, since I'm supposed to be working with you and your unit from now on." Watanabe scratches the back of her head nervously. "So I guess you should ask me some questions or something." Let's ask why she reacted so oddly to my unit's name. Watanabe scratches the back of her head nervously, something she seems to do a lot. After a moment's silence, the kid answers. "Well, I was in New Rodrigo City 2 days ago during the battle. I saw the Imperial machines go through the city, and I saw your machines following them. I could tell by the markings on your hull armor. I just didn't expect you to see you again, that's all." That would make sense. After all, if Watanabe had seen your lance during the battle, she would have seen Mithril carry out your orders regarding the civilian populace. "Is that all?" you ask. Watanabe nods. "Well, there were loud noises and explosions everywhere. I just kept my head down and tried to stay out of the way, so I didn't see much beyond that." You nod. Another logical answer. Well, let's ask her about her nerves. Watanabe looks like you just caught her with a pornographic data tablet. "Nervous?" You nod. "Yeah, I mean, you haven't even touched your food, for starters." For a moment, the kid's mouth works, but no sound comes out. Finally, "I guess it's because I'm new to this whole thing. I'm not even trained for bridge controller work. I was supposed to be trained for naval command, not communications. The only reason I'm here is because your ship needed a bridge controller, and my parents thought I'd be safer in the fleet than at home." You nod. That makes sense, but what was that about the kid's parents trying to get her assigned to the Caliburn? Well, let's ask her about her parents. Watanabe looks up with a look of confusion on her face. My parents?" You nod. "You said that they were the ones who got you this posting." The kid nods, hesitantly, as if it were a fact she wanted to hide. "Yeah, my mom's Minister of Commerce or something, and my dad, Deputy Minister of Industry. They said that the planet was too dangerous with the Imperial fleet in the system, so they got me this post." Watanabe shrugs. "I guess they thought putting me on the front lines of a major war was safer than staying at home," she says with obvious sarcasm plain in her voice. Despite the kid's disapproval, you have to admit that Watanabe's parents had a point. With no fixed defenses of their own, Vedria would be unable to escape a planetary bombardment should the Imperials push the fleet back. At least the Caliburn had armor and point defense, not to mention the ability to retreat. "They're getting somewhere safer too," Watanabe continues. The whole cabinet is leaving planet today. They're headed for Crown Station, just in case the impies push us out. You nod, aware that your face is taking a rather grim expression now that you know a single skirmish in orbit has caused the entire sector of government, the entire senior government of Vedria to flee. Typical politicians. Well, that's everything we needed to know, I guess. Watanabe nods. Okay. You take a quick look at your watch, then lean over and motion at her still unopened ration pack. Now hurry up and eat. Captain Balin wants us in the briefing room in 20 minutes. The kid nods. You turn back to your still unappetizing breakfast and eat as much of it as you can. Neither of you says another word. The briefing room is surprisingly crowded when you step in. While the small, boxy classroom-sized chamber is plenty of space for you and the 5 other pilots of the Caliburns complement under normal conditions, today you are joined by Chief Weaver and 2 full teams of tech crews, not to mention your new bridge controller. You make your way through the crowd of coverall-wearing deck crew to the double row of upholstered leather seats reserved for pilots and bridge crew. Asaidi is waiting for you as you sit down. Morning, boss. Your wingman offhandedly hands you a cup of coffee before turning her attention to something else. You barely take your first sip before Captain Balin strides in from the side entrance, immaculate in her uniform as always. A thin black swagger stick is tucked under her arm, a souvenir of her 15 years of service in the Imperial Fleet before she decided to defect to Kodak at the beginning of the rebellion. As she takes her position at the podium, she makes eye contact with everyone in the room, ensuring she has each person's attention. After a moment, she nods with tacit approval, apparently satisfied. Close the doors. Your heartbeat speeds up at the captain's word. A closed-door briefing means that you know your next assignment is something which only the people in the room are authorized to know about. That could only mean your next assignment is going to be something crucial. The door slams shut, and the captain continues. Needless to say, everything you are about to hear is classified. Not a word of it leaves this room, understood? Everyone in the room knows the importance of secrecy, but Captain Balin still waits for a chorus of acknowledgement. She touches a button on the side of the podium, and the front of the room lights up in a sterile blue glow of a holographic display of Vedria and its surroundings. Good. Let's begin. Half an hour ago, the Imperial forces that attacked us the day before yesterday withdrew beyond the outer limit of our passive sensors. While this confirms that the enemy force has no intention of launching an immediate second attack, it also means that we shall soon have no idea where the enemy is, nor what the enemy's intentions are. The captain manipulates the console on the podium before extending the point of her swagger stick and using it to outline a flight path from the Caliburn symbol on the display. Mithril Lance will fly a reconnaissance mission to ascertain the intentions of the enemy force. Your objective is to locate the enemy force, gather as much intelligence as possible regarding the strength and condition of the remaining assets at their disposal, and, if possible, form a conclusion as to their next likely course of action. You take another sip of coffee. What the captain says next makes you almost spit it out again. Ensign Asaidi will take command of this sortie. Oh, shit. And she was not happy with us, so I guess this is her big chance to do things her way. Let's hope she doesn't get blown up. Wait, what? It seems that your wingman's just as surprised as you are. The captain glares at both of you. You heard me. Lieutenant Commander Tomino has been requested for a different assignment. Asaidi raises her hand. Captain? You sure this is a good idea? I've never had an independent command before. Then this will be your first, Captain Balin replies. I require Lieutenant Commander Tomino to remain here, but you and the rest of the pilots are dismissed. Captain? You do not have clearance to know what is to be said next, Insane. The captain replies, her voice slowly icing over. You are dismissed. Your wingman stands up shakily. Being suddenly placed in the position of command is sure to rattle somebody's nerves, even if that someone is as confident as Asaidi. Do you have anything to say to her before you leave? Don't fuck this up, Asaidi. Either congratulations or good hunting. I'm torn. She's the kind I think that would take a good hunting compliment better. A Sadie shoots back a cocky, toothless grin. It looks like your words have steadied her nerves a little. Yes. Bag 'em yourself. You've got something like 3 dozen kills on me. Hell, without you on the field, I might not even be able to catch your kill count. The room stays silent as a Sadie and the rest of your Lance's pilots walk out the exit. It is only when the doors close again that the captain, continues the briefing. Now as to why you're here, Lieutenant Commander. The captain presses a few more buttons on the podium console, and the holographic display dims into blackness. After our engagement with the Imperial fleet 2 days ago, I sent a request to Fleet Command for information regarding the prototype machine that you recovered, the one currently sitting behind closed blast doors in a Marine guard detail in Hangar Bay A. Captain Balin inputs another set of commands. 6 hours ago, we received a reply. The display at the front of the room lights up again. This time, it displays a full-color, intricately detailed rotating model of the prototype combat armature which you had recovered in your last battle. For the last 3 years, WDI had been working on this combat armature capable of defeating the best the Imperial fleet had to offer. The result was this, the XCA-118 Lionheart. It comes equipped with an experimental power plant, a new type of composite armor plating, an optimized thruster power outlay, a top-of-the-line operating system, and a next-generation particle rifle. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, if this design proves a success, its deployment, even in small numbers, could win us the war. A hush falls over the room. The thought of finally having a weapon capable of turning the tide of war was certainly a heady one. Captain Balin gives you and the others a moment for you to pick up your jaws from the floor, and continues. Of course, that is, if the prototype does not prove wanting. The records Command sent us seem to indicate that the prototype in our possession is effectively complete. The only thing that remained was to test it and determine if it was ready for limited mass production. WDI will be sending a team in system to retrieve the machine, but they have given me the authority to field test the prototype machine. The captain turns to you, a sly grin on her hard-edged face. I told them that I would put my best pilot on the job. Oh, we are getting an upgrade. I think we need to go and find the blue mask. 15 minutes later, you're carefully clambering into the cockpit as the smart fabric of your pilot suit expands and contracts around your shock gel underpadding. You do a last-minute check to make sure your suit is airtight and that all the appropriate modules and dispensers are attached properly before lowering yourself into the Lionheart's cockpit seat. You feel your suit settle around you as your weight sinks into the thin, soft padding of the seat. Chief Weaver's head pokes in through the open cockpit hatch. You comfortable in there, Lieutenant Commander? The chair's padding isn't quite as worn as your Manninghams, but it's soft enough and doesn't seem to pinch in the wrong places. You give the deck chief a thumbs up. It'll do, Chief. Weaver nods. All right, strap yourself in. We're sealing the cockpit. You nod. 5 years of muscle memory and countless past launches send your hands up as they begin reaching for the safety belts to the side of your chairs. Thankfully, whoever laid out your cockpit put the straps exactly where they would have been on your Manningham. The second you strap yourself in, the hangar chief pulls the armored canopy down over your cockpit. For a moment, you see nothing but blackness, and hear nothing but the high-pitched hiss of pressurization. Then, there is light. An arc of hard light panels ignites before you in a spray of holographic pale blue glow. Loading bars and initialization graphics fade into silvery, strobing celerity on each of your screens as your HUD comes to life. After a moment, the darkened inner shell of the cockpit lights up as well. One by one, the visual sensors recessed into the Lionheart's hull activate and begin feeding data into the main cockpit display. Within seconds, you are surrounded by a panoramic view of the hangar bay outside the Lionheart. You can see Weaver pulling the access ladder away, the deck teams doing final checks on the exterior of the test machine, and the great metal maintenance braces holding the machine still slowly retreating into the hangar bay wall. Lines, boxes, and streams of telemetry pop into existence as your tactical overlay superimposes itself onto the main display. You take a moment to look through the hull cams. The resolution is sharp, far sharper than the display on your Manningham, and you savor the experience of being able to see through the machine with perfect vision. One of the smaller holoscreens to the side chirps for attention. It's your comms display. You answer the call to see Chief Weaver's face pop up on side screen, flanked by a handful of curious deck crew. All right, Lieutenant Commander. Everything load up all right? Everything looks fine up here, Chief. Weaver smiles. Ready to see what this baby can do? You know what? I'm looking forward to this just as much as you are. We're excited to get our new machine. The deck chief chuckles softly. I'm glad to hear that, sir. The deck chief pulls up a data tablet and spares it a quick glance before turning back to you. Alright, I got the documentation in front of me. You figure out where everything is yet? You check the cockpit around you. Despite the brand new displays and futuristic layout, the Lionheart's designers were at least smart enough to put all the basic controls in the same decades-old configuration that you and every other military pilot in Kodak is familiar with. Within a few seconds, you have both hands resting firmly on the combination arm controls and throttle assemblies, and both your feet slotted into the leg control frames. I'm ready to go, Chief. Weaver checks the data tablet again before nodding. Alright, let's do a Phase 1 pre-flight check. You nod back. With the test field begun in earnest, the deck chief is all business. With your hands and feet locked into the controls of a 70 metric ton walking weapon and surrounded by both fragile equipment and fragile deck crew, any lapse in focus might lead to dire consequences. The deck chief sets the tablet down. The pre-flight checks you are about to start are no different than the ones you run through before every combat sortie. You've done it 1,000 times. Weaver's done it even more. Both of you could easily rattle off each step by heart. In fact, that's exactly what you do. Alright, Weaver begins. Diagnostic systems? You make sure each display is loaded and ready. Check. Emergency systems? You ensure that the ejection seats, emergency power, and distress beacons are all reading green. Check. APCS? You check the automatic posture control system. You activate the automatic posture control system and feel your control assembly stiffen slightly as they come online. Check. Fuel. You scan your fuel status display and make sure that all of the power linkages show green. Check. Weaver grins. There's only one part of the phase left. Primary power plant, activate. You gently press a large red button on one of the displays in front of you. The low, breathy whisper of a matter-antimatter reactor fills your cockpit as the XCA-118 Lionheart comes to life. Nice of them to put the power as a big red button. The cockpit rumbles with power, like a giant lung taking a first shuddering breath. You can feel the power of the machine permeate the air around you. Your body tingles with energy as the Lionheart's metal and ceramic body activates piece by piece. You take a quick glance at the main status display. Everything looks good. Phase 1, check. The deck chief gives you a thumbs up and a broad grin. Nothing wrong on this end either. Let's get started on Phase 2. Phase 2 of the pre-flight check generally requires you to test the synthetic muscles which control joint articulation. You reach out with one of the Lionheart arms. Whoa! You exclaim as you feel the machine's arms swing out with surprising speed. Compensating quickly, you bring the overextending arm under control before you do any real damage. What the hell was that? You exclaim as you try to calm your racing heart. Weaver takes a look at the manual tablet. It says here the Lionheart's power output is verging on 3 times that of your old Manningham. Some of the excess power probably goes towards boosting the joint servos. You might want to use a gentler touch. Following the deck chief's advice, you start waving each limb around and gingerly walking around the hangar bay. Despite the first close call, it doesn't take very long for you to get the hang of the boosted limbs. Within 2 minutes, you're managing to move them around without swinging them wildly in every direction, a good sign. Finally, you move the Lionheart across the hangar bay. Phase 2, check. The deck chief gives you the thumbs up. Looks good from here, Lieutenant Commander. How you feeling so far? This machine has a lot of power. We're going to use it to end this war. Because we don't want to be in a war. Weaver nods in agreement, but not without a word of warning. I get what you're saying, Lieutenant Commander, but you need to be careful in this thing. I don't think it's completely safe, and you can't make this war end any faster if you're dead. With that, the deck chief returns to the checklist, moving on to the next item. Anyway, Phase 3. Diverging power to VIGF. Your fingers dance across the hard light console pads, transferring power to the variable inertia field generator, the crucial provider of the combat armature's famed maneuverability. Under normal Newtonian physics, the high-speed accelerations and turns which are such a vital part of combat armature piloting would crush any human pilot under the equivalent of 1,000 times their own weight in inertial force. By generating a field around your cockpit and canceling the inertia of everything within that field, using the same principles as a starship's FTL drive and artificial gravity generators, the combat armature's VIF generator is capable of mitigating It's capable of mitigating the vast majority of the inertial forces at play during a dogfight. This means that high-speed maneuverability and high-energy weapon impacts that would normally reduce your body to a paste now merely rattle you around with your cockpit at worst. You feel no difference as the variable inertia field activates, but your display tells you that it is working just fine. You hope they aren't lying. VIGF reads green, Chief. Weaver nods again. Pre-flight check complete. Take your stims, Lieutenant Commander. You press a button on the side of your flight helmet. You feel a series of pricks on the inside of your left wrist as the injectors in your suit go to work filling your body with the potent cocktail of combat drugs, which gives you the superhuman physical capabilities needed to pilot a combat armature. After a few moments, you feel lighter, your breathing becomes easier, and your vision sharpens until you can see the individual motes of dust floating in the light of your cockpit displays. You take the last few steps towards the elevator to the deployment deck with dexterity which you could have never managed normally, the stims giving you precise control over the Lionheart's temperamental limbs. Stand by for transfer to deployment control, Weaver says just before his face disappears from the comms display. The elevator lowers you into an airlock chamber. You hear the sounds of the ship around you fade into silence as the atmosphere beyond the Lionheart's armor shell is vented away. By the time your mecha reaches the exposed catapult deck, you hear nothing but the quiet whine of the Lionheart's engine, the leathery crackle of its synthetic muscles, and the soft tempo of your own breathing. A moment later, as you are lowered into position below one of the Caliburn's 2 catapults, you see Inari Watanabe's face appear on your comms display. Deck is free, you have launch clearance. Carefully, you send the Lionheart forward into the tunnel-like main passage of the catapult system, locking each contact point with the corresponding magnetic accelerator rail on the deck and vertical walls of the launch corridor. Locked and ready for launch. Watanabe hesitates for a moment, looking off to the side quickly before turning back. Lock confirmed, you have control. An instant later, another hard light screen pops up. Catapult control. You take a second to brace yourself for the abrupt gut punch of sudden acceleration. Even with the variable inertia field at full power, the catapult is bound to hurl your stomach into your spine. Nobody knows where it came from, but ever since they were first fielded, combat armature pilots have had a tradition of using a unique, something halfway between a battle cry and a personal motto shouted before they launch. They range from the businesslike to the grandiose, but every pilot has one. So naturally, as you punch the launch button, you declare yours. I'm sorry I stumbled that last sentence. I've got a big smirk on my face. I like let's do it. Yoshiyuki Tomino, let's do it! Yeah, let's go with that. The sudden rush of acceleration pushes you back against your seat as the catapult rails hurl the Lionheart forward. The 300-meter long launch corridor whizzes past you in seconds as your machine is pushed faster and faster, your controls locked by the magnetic clamps. Then you are free. The catapult launches you clear of the Caliburn's knife-like hull, and you find yourself surrounded by the sparkling blackness of space. Chief Weaver's face pops up next to Watanabe's. You still alive in there? You nod, satisfied that the VIF generator is indeed functioning, and that the sudden acceleration of your launch hasn't reduced your body to the consistency of mashed potatoes. The deck chief checks off an item on his omnipresent data tablet. How's the RCS? You turn the mecha around to face the Caliburn, and as you do, your veneer thrusters fire off automatically, steadying your turn and exercising finite computer-driven control over your movements. You move the Lionheart arms and legs around, something you can do with much greater agility now that the combat stims are honing your hand-eye coordination to a fine edge, watching as the automatic reaction control systems keeps the multi-ton war machine steady by canceling out inertia generated by its limbs. RCS looks good, Chief. Alright, it looks like we're done with the first phase of field testing. Now we can get down to the fun stuff. You nod eagerly. Weapons testing and high-velocity maneuver trials are up next. A dozen of the broadside missile tubes recessed into the Caliburn's hulls open up. Each spits out a small silvery egg lit up by a soft strobing red light. Weapons test targets are away, Watanabe announces. Confirm target lock? You take a look at your tactical display and notice a bit of a problem. I've got nothing on scope. The screen's blank. Weaver injects himself into the conversation. What do you mean blank? Has your tactical display malfunctioned? You shake your head. The screen's up and everything seems to be configured properly, but neither the Caliburn nor the targets are showing up. You look at the screen again to see if you can figure out what's wrong, but draw a blank. The Lionheart could still be missing an IFF data package, Weaver says over the comm line. The hardware is complete, but that doesn't mean all the software has been loaded in. That makes sense. Without the necessary identification, friend or foe software to interpret sensor contacts, your tactical display has no information to work with. Watanabe turns in her station to say something to the captain. She turns back a moment later. The captain says to continue with your tests. I think you're going to have to just confirm the targets visually. Weaver shakes his head. I don't like this, Lieutenant Commander. I'm torn right now. The software would be excessively useful, but I kind of feel like if we go on without it, we might get a little bit of an edge, just in case it accidentally gets knocked out or doesn't see something. But that's not a good rate. If we had something like, we'll be okay, that would be my response. But I guess we'll have to go with, what's the matter, Chief? Scared? Yeah, this was not the best choice. The deck chief's expression turns angry. We're testing an experimental weapon of war with who knows what kind of capabilities over an inhabited planet, a weapon that just so happens to have no way of telling friend from foe. Damn right I'm scared. You shake your head. That kind of attitude is why I'm flying this thing and you're not. Continue to test, Chief. Oh, that didn't take the turn that I wanted it to. I guess we should have taken that second. Anyway. Weaver begins to say something, but stops himself. Alright, let's keep going. Before either of you can say anything else, Watanabe cuts in nervously. What's the next step? Weaver nods, any lingering protest submerged under a professionalism. Next up is the weapons test. As soon as the words weapon test comes up, the kid seems to lean forward in her chair. Weapons test? The deck chief nods. Yeah, you heard right, but don't get any idea, kid. This here trial is to measure the capabilities of the hardware. It's best to be slow and meticulous for this sort of thing. I hope both of you keep that in mind. You nod. Which weapon do I start with? Weaver shrugs. It's your call, Lieutenant Commander. Which weapon do you want to start with? Oh, we want to do the ranged. We did so well with our sniper rifle earlier. Let's try something familiar, you decide. I'll start with the particle rifle. Weaver nods, but doesn't refrain from a last word of warning. Just remember, Lieutenant Commander, this weapon isn't like the gun on the Manningham or the Grenzer. It may take the same kind of heat sinks as the older weapons, but you don't need to cycle a bolt or anything like that. Just squeeze the trigger to fire. The weapon ejects the old heatsink, and the chamber's another one automatically. You can understand how that would serve as an advantage in combat. Without the need to cycle a bolt to fire again, a Lionheart pilot could fire as quickly as they squeeze the trigger. Alright, I got it. The deck chief nods. Then you are clear to fire, Lieutenant Commander. You raise the rifle and point it towards the nearest target a few thousand meters away. After taking a second to aim, you squeeze the trigger. A streak of blue light explodes from the muzzle of your rifle and punches through the egg-shaped object dead center. Hit by a stream of charged particles moving at 2/3 the speed of light, the target drone disintegrates into a cloud of superheated gas and shattered metal. Watanabe's eyes are fixed on the broken remnants of your target. That was awesome, she says under her breath. It shoots just fine, you report, somewhat redundantly. We'll blast a few more targets, Weaver responds. I want to make sure the reloading system works properly, too. How do you want to proceed? Are we going to wind up with a broken system? And we should take it slow to figure out the error? You know what? It makes sense if we do it in combat as efficiently as possible. Because as long as this thing works like how we want it to. You keep the Lionheart stationary as you pick out your targets on your main display. You take a few seconds to line up your first shot perfectly before squeezing the trigger. The target shatters as it is pierced by a streak of blue fire. You shift your sights to the next target, line it up, and fire again. Another careful shot, another direct hit. You fire as if you were in a shooting range, never moving, simply lining up each shot as best you can before firing a single aimed shot. With your target stationary and plainly visible, it's almost impossible to miss. By the time you take aim for your fifth target, Chief Weaver is still intently taking notes, but the kid is entirely lost interest. Perhaps she was expecting something flashier? Yeah. As your fifth target disintegrates and you begin to line up a sixth, Weaver stops you. That's all the readings I need, Lieutenant Commander. You can move on to the plasma cutter now. You double-check the power linkages to the plasma cutter and make sure all 4 of them show green. With the amount of energy and superheated gas involved, you know that a critical malfunction could easily melt the Lionheart's arm off. Oh, that's missing quotation marks there. Linkages look good, you say, as you push the Lionheart slowly towards the closest group of targets. Here goes. You touch the activator on the arm control assembly. A bright blade of silver-blue fire flares from the emitter. As soon as the first target comes into range, you swing. The superheated stream of plasma slices through the egg-like drone effortlessly. This is what happens when I read out loud for so long. Effortlessly, leaving 2 metal halves behind, each still glowing bright orange from the heat of your blade. Watanabe's eyes seem glued to the screen. That was really cool, she says, more to herself than you. It's lighter than I thought it would be, but I think I got the hang of it, you report. Weaver nods in agreement. Looks like it, but let's be sure. Cut up a few more targets for me, will ya? How do you want to handle the next few targets? But we're not going to be using this thing, so I'm gonna be a bit flashy. You advance towards the next target, carefully pacing yourself as you approach striking distance. Only, instead of lashing out at the metallic object with your plasma cutter, you backhand it with your other arm, sending it twirling away from your machine. Immediately, you push forward, past a second target and towards a third. With a burst of thrusters, you twist your machine into a tight spin, smashing the Lionheart's foot into the target, sending it flying backwards. You turn and open the throttle, sending your machine towards the point where all three of your targets converge. You swing just as the three silvery objects drift in front of you. Your timing is perfect. With a single, blindingly fast stroke of your plasma cutter, you slice all three targets in half simultaneously. You hear Watanabe make an involuntary gasp of amazement. Judging by her face, the kid's clearly impressed. Chief Weaver nods. Now, there are a few issues I'd like to take a gander at, but the frantic chirping of an urgent call sounds from Watanabe's comm window. For a moment, the young bridge operator looks away. All of a sudden, the kid turns around, shouting something urgent at the captain behind her. When she looks back, she is pale and shaking. "We have a problem," she announces, voice quivering. Captain Balin ducks into frame. "Lieutenant Commander, these trials have just become time critical. Finish them as soon as possible, then report back to the ship for emergency detox and rest cycle." Your eyebrows shoot up at the mention of emergency detox regimen. That would mean purging all of your body of all of its combat stimulants prematurely through the use of a terrifying potent chemical cocktail. With the possibility of permanent damage to your body, the procedure is an extremely risky and dangerous one, a last resort. The captain responds to your questions before you even speak them aloud. Ensign Asadi just made contact with the Imperial fleet. They're headed our way and will make contact with us within 20 hours. We need you rested and flying again by then. There's no time to wait for the combat stimulants to diffuse naturally. Thoughts fly through your head. Ensign Asadi and the other 4 pilots of your Lance are facing who knows how many enemy ships and combat armatures by themselves. Ultimately, only one thought remains. I hope Asadi was able to prove herself. You know from both theory and experience that despite potential shown in training and simulations, some promising officers crack when placed under the pressure of actual command under field conditions, overcome by the stress of actually having human lives weigh on their decisions. Then again, other officers, even ones who are thought to be hopeless cases, have been known to truly come into their own and display their preciously hidden talents only when placed in command, where they might operate relatively free of oversight. You hope for her sake, and for your Lance's sake, that Asadi proves the latter. Unfortunately for you, Asadi and your Lances are 3 million kilometers away. You focus on the present and the tasks before you, namely, the remaining exercises required to test the Lionheart's capabilities. Chief, what's next? Weaver looks down at his data tablet for a moment. There's only the high-velocity maneuver trial left. You nod in acknowledgement. While weapons and armor are certainly important parts of a combat armature's effectiveness in the field, the ability to make sharp turns and stop quickly at high velocities is also an important factor, an extremely important factor. An agile mecha could outturn a better protected opponent and attack from undefended direction, or evade the fire of a better armed enemy. Ready to see how well she can move? Weaver asks with a look of anticipation. You can understand Weaver's excitement. With a reactor output 3 times that of a Manningham, you bet the Lionheart could turn, brake, and accelerate with the best of both Kodak and the Imperial military have to offer, even with its heavy armor. You nod. I'm ready, Chief. Weaver nods back. Watanabe, still looking a bit distracted, pushes a few buttons on her console. 3 more of the Caliburn's missile tubes open up. This time, bright red emergency flares come out of each tube. Each flare streaks out for a few seconds before bringing themselves to a stop. Together, They form a triangle around the Caliburn, 50 kilometers long on each side. Flares are on station, Lieutenant Commander, the deck chief announces. I need you to get to each flare as fast as you can, pass within 50 meters of each flare, then get back to this position. Sounds good, Chief. Alright then. Ready? Go. Your body is flung back into the chair as you push the throttles forward as far as they can go. The Lionheart's vibrating frame transitions from a full-throttled roar of its engine into your cockpit as the machine surges forward at a blinding speed, taking you with it. The blinking red point of the first sensor beacon edges closer with increasing speed until you seem to streak towards it like a bullet. The Lionheart rushes past the first beacon. You pull the prototype around to reorient yourself to the next beacon. Then you push the throttles forward again to make the turn. Nothing happens. Instead, your machine continues on its original course. Your RCS has turned you around, but your momentum is still sending you on your original trajectory. Lieutenant Commander, Weaver's faces looked a little panicked. What the hell is going on out there? You feel yourself panic a little. My brake thrusters aren't responding. My primary thrusters aren't responding. What the hell is happening? Okay, you feel yourself panicking a lot. Lieutenant Commander, the deck chief barks, for the first time you've heard raise his voice in a long time. I need you to calm down. Are the thrusters malfunctioning? You take a deep breath. Your heart's still pounding in your ears, but you get a hold of yourself and take a look. Everything comes up green on your cockpit display. I'm not reading any malfunctions. The thrusters should be working fine. The deck chief scratches the back of his head, his brow burrowed in frustration. Then it's probably an interface problem. The flight computer isn't reading your controls properly. Chief? Watanabe asks. If the problem is that the controls aren't being read, does that mean the autopilot system could still fire the thrusters? Weaver nods. It might, but the autopilot needs a signature to lock onto, and we don't have one. The IFF package is missing, remember? Can it be entered manually? I have the Caliburn's IFF code here somewhere. You bring up the tacticals display, trying to keep calm as your machine continues to hurtle further and further away from your home carrier. If you could enter the Caliburn's IFF code into the Lionheart computer, then you can lock onto the carrier if you activate the automatic recovery system. Certainly worth a shot. After a few moments of searching, you find a way to manually enter the Caliburn's IFF code. I've got it, you announce. I need that code. Watanabe rattles off the string of letters and digits off, almost faster than you can enter them. With the code entered into the Lionheart's computer, you pull up another display and reach for the button that should activate your machine's automated recovery system. If it works, then you should pilot a course back to the Caliburn, directly overriding any previous commands to make sure you reach the safety of the carrier's hangar. If it doesn't, well, best not to dwell on that. You press the button. Automated piloting system online. Immediately, you feel the Lionheart begin to decelerate and turn around in a wide arc, orienting itself towards the Caliburn's location. You breathe a sigh of relief. The kid falls back down, exhausted, into her chair. Even Chief Weaver takes a deep breath. Unfortunately, the day isn't over yet. Lieutenant Commander? You sit back up at Watanabe's worried tone. We've got a problem. Your trajectory takes you within 5 kilometers of a civilian transport craft's flight plan. You stop yourself to take a look before you confirm the kid's readings. Without an IFF data package, your tactical sensors are useless. Instead, you take a look at the main display. Sure enough, you can see the telltale flare of a spacecraft engine up ahead, crossing your path. I have visual confirmation. Can you wave it off? Watanabe turns to the side, frantically pressing her keys on her console. A moment later, she turns back, expression panicked. I can't get them to answer. What do I do? Let's tell her to calm down. We are the ones in trouble, not her. The kid nods. I know, I just... Watanabe takes a deep breath, then shakes her head. Never mind. You look up to see the gray shape of the civilian craft loom larger and larger in your main display. Your cockpit fills with the harsh beeping of a proximity alarm. Your mouth goes dry, and your muscles curl in on themselves when you realize what this means. You're on a collision course with a ship full of civilians. With time running out, you really don't have a lot of options. Your first possible solution would be to simply reboot the Lionheart's flight computer. That would kill the auto-recovery system, but would also leave you drifting at the same relative velocity, and still on a collision course with the civilian craft. You would have to manage to regain control and fly the Lionheart out of the way as soon as your controls came online. And that's only if whatever malfunction that made you lose control in the first place doesn't come up again. The second option would be to try and enter the civilian vessel's IFF code into the tactical computer. If you're fast enough and sharp-eyed enough to avoid any typos, the auto-recovery system should trigger its collision avoidance subroutines and maneuver around the oncoming ship. Another option to you would be to override the automatic system recovery. Unfortunately, only two systems can do that: self-destruct and emergency re-entry. While the first is clearly not an option, the second will lock your controls and send you hurtling into the atmosphere of the planet below. Unless the Lionheart has already been equipped with the ablative re-entry gel dispensers, your machine will have to weather the stress and heat of re-entry without heat shielding, a risky procedure at best. What do you do? Oh, shit. I'm assuming that we have the IFF codes of the ship. You know what? Screw it. We are not dealing... We're going to reboot and try and gain control. You reach for the flight computer's reset button as nervous sweat drips down your brow and into your eyes. The instant you press the button, the entire cockpit goes blank. You wait anxiously for the cockpit to display to reboot, knowing that every instant brings you closer to a collision with hundreds of unsuspecting civilians. Your main display comes back up. The civilian vessel is barely a few seconds away. Without a moment to lose, you haul back on the throttles. To your relief, your machine responds to your commands. The Lionheart comes to a stop just a few hundred meters short of the passenger vessel, which continues on its course, oblivious. You spend the next few seconds taking deep, long breaths and trying not to think about how close you were to ramming into a ship full of civilians. Does this civilian ship not have proximity alarms too? How are they so unaware? Oh well. You fly the Lionheart back to the Caliburn, taking care not to push the prototype machine forward too fast. After today's close call, you definitely want to play it safe. You set the white Mecha's feet into the recovery deck with a sigh of relief, still breathing a bit hard from the receding panic of your near collision. Chief Weaver and his deck crew are waiting for you as the recovery elevator lowers you into the hangar bay, and you wearily walk the Lionheart into the maintenance berth. As soon as the heavy clamps secure the machine, you begin shutdown routine. One by one, the cockpit's displays go dark until finally the machine powers down and the scalloped plates of the Lionheart's frontal armor slide open. The second you clamber down the access ladder and take off your suit helmet, you find the deck chief looking at the prototype. Its armor still gleams white and flawless as Weaver's deck crews begin to scale it for its post-flight inspection. That was a close call today, Weaver says as he turns away and motions for you to follow. Now follow me. We're going to take a look at your flight recordings before you detox to make sure it never happens again. For the next half an hour, he assails you with a long stream of questions, mostly technical. Together, the two of you use your memory, cockpit recordings, and deck chief's vast engineering knowledge to reconstruct an outline of the Lionheart's mechanical malfunction during the high-velocity maneuver trials. After his questions, the deck chief takes a look through his accumulated notes on the data tablet. After a minute or so, the deck chief nods his head conclusively. Well, I think I've found what went wrong. We want to know in case it happens again so we can fix it ourselves. It's called a stack overflow error. It's been a problem that software engineers have been dealing with for centuries. Long story short, your flight computer determines which thrusters to trigger when you order any sort of maneuverability, be it a turn, acceleration, or deceleration in a certain direction. You know why that is, of course. You nod. Yeah, because the computer also has to calculate which thrusters it needed to fire to cancel the pre-existing velocity. Exactly. The problem with the OS currently installed on the Lionheart was designed for a much slower machine. When you pushed it past the maximum velocity it could account for, the software simply registered an error and did nothing. That's why your controls stopped responding. Thankfully, the emergency systems had contingencies built in to handle higher velocities, or you'd still be out there. You nod. Can you fix it? Weaver shakes his head. It's a problem with the Lionheart software, and we don't have the time or resources to reprogram a combat armature's flight computer from the ground up. The deck chief scratches his head for a second, thinking. What I could do is install physical limiters. That means the machine's speed would be drastically reduced. It would still cause further problems down the line, but it will stop this particular malfunction from happening again. Before the deck chief can speak further, the door slides open. Captain Balin enters the room, data tablet in hand, barely wasting time on a quick exchange of salutes. She walks over to Chief Weaver. Are you done with the debriefing, Chief? Weaver shakes his head. Not yet, ma'am. The captain purses her lips in frustration. Well, you are now. She turns to you. Lieutenant Commander, I need an honest answer. Is the Lionheart ready for combat operations, and if it is, will you pilot it the next time we enter battle? The deck chief steps in, brow furrowed in anger. Now hold on a minute. That machine damn near killed who knows how many civilians today. Do we really need to send it into combat? The captain responds with a glare that could melt steel. Weaver takes a step back. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your senior officer turns back to you. We're going to need every advantage we can get, pilot. Your wingman sent us some of her pictures before she was forced to withdraw. They confirm that the task force we defeated 2 days ago is returning and has been reinforced by the Imperial fleet. You nod. So how many Imperial ships are we facing? The captain hands you her data tablet. On it is an image which makes your blood run cold. The image shows a massive formation of Imperial warships, 100 of them at least. The image is marked as only 5 minutes old. All of them. Holy shit. The implications don't have time to go through your head before Captain Balin spells them out for you. If the Lionheart is capable of performance superior to your regular machine, then its abilities will be desperately needed in the battle to come. However, as the only person on board who has piloted the machine in question, I leave that decision to you. With the Lionheart still undamaged from your test run, there is no doubt in your mind that it is ready for combat as it was at the beginning of the day. It's pretty obvious that the Lionheart is a far superior machine performance-wise than your old Manningham. However, today's test run has made it blatantly clear that the prototype machine might malfunction with catastrophic events in the middle of a battle. Whether the high speed or potent weapons of the experimental mecha are worth the risk is entirely up to you. Of course, if you allowed Chief Weaver to install limiters on the Lionheart's thrusters, you could pilot it and take advantage of its powerful weaponry without the risk of suffering the same malfunction. On the other hand, the limiters would also decrease the machine's speed and maneuverability. Lastly, you could stick to your old Manningham. While it may not be as fast or well-armed as the Lionheart, your Manningham isn't an unreliable, untested prototype either. You know what? I'm thinking we install the limiters, because even if it cuts our speed in half. We'll still be faster than the Manningham, and we'll still have better weapons. I'll launch in the Lionheart, ma'am, you reply. The captain nods. Chief Weaver shakes his head. Please tell me you're going to have the limiters installed. You nod. I don't want to find myself in an out-of-control machine during the middle of battle. The deck chief nods, expression relaxed. Glad to see you've got some sense left, sir. Captain Balin turns to Weaver. There is no time to waste. Insing, Asadi, and the rest of Mithril Lance should be returning within the hour. Prepare for their arrival. The deck chief quickly leaves. The captain turns to you. Report to the infirmary for emergency detox, then get some rest. We are soon going to be very busy. And with that, I'm going to call it a part. Later, everybody.